Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. What is the creepiest and most unexplainable paranormal experience you've ever had? Not me, but a friend of mine told me about a dream she had years ago about a decrepit old man who was being chased by wolves. In the dream, he kept referring to himself in the third person as Old Skin. Old Skin's gotta get away from the wolves. Eventually, the wolves caught up to him and started ripping him to pieces in front of her, and he kept narrating the events in a monotone voice. Old Skin's being eaten alive, Old Skin's gonna die. She woke up feeling creeped out, but the weirdest part came when she started describing the dream to her brother. He stopped her mid-sentence and asked, "Was his name Old Skin?" I had the exact same dream. I don't know if that counts as paranormal, but it's effing creepy. When I was in elementary school, I shared a queen-size bed with my older sister, and our family dog, a mutt that looked like a short-haired lassie, would sleep at the foot of our bed every night. The figure was entirely in black without any eyes or a face. I tried to wake my sister up, but she rolled over to go back to sleep. My sister must have accidentally kicked the dog, because the dog woke up and raised her head and started growling at the figure at the foot of the bed. When my parents came into the room and turned the light on, nothing was there. To this day, both my sister and I are adamant that we saw a ghost or other demon in our room. We know we aren't crazy because the dog saw it too. Okay, not me, but my family. My grandfather was a bad man. Alcoholic, extremely violent, tried to kill my grandmother in front of their kids. One of his less horrible acts was abandoning my grandmother with their 6 kids, all under the age of 12. Some of his kids maintained minimal contact with him. When he was in his 80s he was hospitalized and then passed away in the middle of the night. In the morning his oldest child, one of my aunts, went to the morgue to identify the body and fill out paperwork. On her way she stopped by my grandmother's to break the news. He died just past midnight, I imagine. My grandmother had begun to show some signs of dementia or just basic old age, and so the weird comments weren't too out of character. And, my aunt assumed that the hospital one of her siblings had already called to tell their mother the news. My aunt shook it off and drove to the morgue. When she saw the death certificate she was shocked to see the time of death listed as 12:10 a.m. He wanted to apologize for all he'd done to me and you kids. I think he made his peace and was able to move on, so I'm glad for that. My grandmother then resumed humming and doing a jigsaw puzzle. Why I read this SHT when I am home alone is beyond me. Mine is second-hand. My stepmom and my dad used to work opposite shifts there for a while. He was on nights, her on days. They had a set of baby monitors from when my sister and I were babies. This went on for a bit. Then once their shifts lined up they put the monitors away in storage. She died of cancer at a really young age, and my dad had just gotten back from the funeral and was home alone. He spent that night going through their things, packing some of her stuff away. It said "I love you Mike, I love you Mike," over and over. My dad told me he just sat on the couch in the dark and listened to her message until the batteries died. A couple of weeks later he had picked us kids up for the weekend. After my sister and I went inside he said he was sitting on the porch smoking, and a strong gust of wind blew and he said he could smell her perfume that she always wore. It scared me hearing those stories as a kid, but now I can see the beauty and peace in those experiences. Have posted this before, but when I was a kid, my brother and I would get stuck with babysitting the neighbor's kid. His name was Alex. So one night, when I fell asleep on the couch, while babysitting, my brother came to me and said, "Alex is under your bed and shaking." I asked, "What's wrong with him?" My brother told me to follow him into the room and try to talk him back out from under the bed. I go inside to find him on the verge of tears as he was trembling profusely under my bed. I asked Alex, "What's wrong? Why are you under there?" Alex whimpered, while looking at my sliding closet. Now, my parents were out to dinner with his, and he explained the whole story in detail to both his parents and mine. His explanation sent shivers down my spine when my brother and I left the house to meet up with his parents and find out what happened. My mom told me that Alex was playing with my Legos and hear a slight murmur from my closet, something that resembled a faint vocalization of, "Come here." He said that he looked behind him and noticed the closet had a slight opening with light peering in from my lamp. He told us that there was a man in my closet. Alex then hid under my bed after he gave out a slight yelp, which attracted my brother's attention. My family rushes back into my house and into my room. In horror, we find my closet door rocked open. My window had been left open, when it was previously closed, and a few things knocked over which had not been touched previously. We still don't know what force we were reckoning after that evening. Thank God nothing more severe happened. I saw my deceased ex-husband in my kitchen. I was watching TV in my living room, in the middle of the day, and kept hearing this sound, like someone was jiggling their change around. And it was loud, as if it were in the room with me. I paused my TV yet the sound persisted, so I start to look around the room, and when I got to the kitchen, I saw him standing there. He was looking around, as if taking stock of my apartment. Oh, and he was jiggling change in one hand, while flipping a quarter in between his fingers with the other hand. Something he did a lot when he was alive. He turned his head and saw me frozen, staring at him. The expression on his face was new. I would never forget. When I turned back to my ex, he was gone. It's worth noting that he had only been dead for a couple months too. Some Romanian women I worked with told me that the dead stick around for 3 months before crossing over. I don't know about all that, but I know without a shadow of a doubt what I saw that day. Okay. I haven't told anyone this story since I was a child, because when I told my cousins what was happening it scared them really bad, and I got my second only whooping with a belt by my dad. When I was in 2nd grade I woke up one summer night, dead of night, to a woman floating through my window into my bedroom. Oddly, I wasn't scared. I couldn't even remember what she looked like. So next I said to her, in true 8-year-old fashion, "Well, you better get going because my dad might wake up and then he'll be mad." She slipped out of my already cracked open bedroom door and I went back to sleep. Sounds like sleep paralysis, right? Wrong. The next day I was really excited that I had my own fairy godmother and I named her Crystal. And I thought in my head, please come back. Come back and wake me up at dawn so we can talk. ISHT you not. The next morning, just as it was getting light outside, I hear someone whispering my name. I realized that this SHT was real, and she was a ghost, and I froze. As I'm typing this, tears are coming to my eyes. Okay, happened once, coincidence, right? Nope. Every time I would get brave and say out loud to her, before going to bed in my room, "Okay, come this time I swear I won't get scared." She would come, whispering my name, and I would almost SHD my pants in fear and never open my eyes. So at this point I'm thinking, still could be night terrors, right? I mean, our eyes have receptors sensitive to light that wake us up, thus causing me to wake up at dawn and hallucinate this shit. Here's where SHD gets real. She doesn't believe me, says to me, "Okay, ask her to come tonight. We're sleeping in same tent and my friend wants to see for herself." So I do. And at dawn, I hear her, calling my name and my friend's name. We don't move, she leaves, and we both sit up and my friend heard her too. Later that summer I told my cousin this story, and before that night, she freaks out, tells her mom, and I get my ass beat for telling ghost stories. I got pissed about said beating, and angrily said out loud, "I got in trouble because of you, and I never want to see you ever again." And I haven't. Ever, thank F-king God. And I just don't think about it anymore, and never when I'm alone at night. Late to the party. But here is mine. I used to be in the military and the training camp bunk that we lived in was said to be haunted. Occasionally, our stuff would go missing and reappear in weird places, like under our bed, or inside a bag that we had zipped up and stuff. No big deal, right? I mean, human error and all. Then came the instance that freaked everyone out. It was one night after lights out and my friend was on his phone texting his girlfriend. Most of us were drifting off to sleep, and were lying on our beds etc. Till this day, what happens next chills me to the bone. While he pretended to sleep, he heard someone right behind him, at the other side of his bed going, "Don't worry, you can continue to pretend sleep." I would dismiss this as a figment of his imagination, except about 5 other people around him heard it as well, including me. Creepier still, there was no one there, and it was the voice of a little girl that said it. For reference, our training camp was in the middle of an island, and was set up away from the main admin blocks. The island has been closed by the government for army training purposes for the past 15 years, so there were definitely no civilians around, let alone kids. To make matters freakier, when we came back from our weekend home leave, there was a bunch of female hair on his bed, neatly bundled up, long and jet black. Under his pillow was a note, "Remember me?" Now, as I said, we were in the middle of a forest, in the middle of an island. And at that point in time, there were no female recruits, personnel on the island. Our bunks were locked up for the weekend and the duty sergeant had no idea that the incident happened. We never spoke about it after that night. Still chills me to the bone thinking about it. When I was about 16 years old, I encountered something that still bugs me to this day. I woke up around 6 a.m. on a normal weekday and went downstairs to get ready to school. No one else in my family had woken up at this point. I got in the shower, still sleepy and could barely hold my eyes open. The person then proceeded to aggressively open the door. I saw the door handle going up and down like crazy and he or she / whatever knocked on the door harder and harder. And then it suddenly stopped. Didn't think that much about it. But when I got out of the shower I realized that nobody was up yet, and after a while my dad came down the stairs, so I asked him if it was he who had wanted to use the bathroom earlier. He said no, and that both my mom and younger brother was still asleep, so it could have not been them either. And even if it had been any family member, they would not have tried to open the door so aggressively at 6 in the morning. First post, don't hate me. /scared Swede. I used to have this reoccurring dream where this black figure with no face would visit me and try to posses me. It would typically enter my being through my mouth and at that point I would have no control over my dream. It would tell me to do terrible things to people and it had a scratchy voice. I would wake up with the same feeling, oftentimes vomiting right away. The last time this happened must have been 3 years ago. Growing up, my older brother had a computer program that he used to compose piano music on. I remember I was reading in the living room when I heard the most beautiful violin melody I have ever heard. I listened to the whole thing, which was several minutes long. Lived in an old 2-bedroom, 3-story walk-up for a time in my early 20s in Toronto. A few days after moving in, my roommate Mike chides me in the morning for banging on the wall that separated our bedrooms and pacing back and forth across the apartment at night. We agreed that it must have been nothing and left it at that, but this became a regular nightly occurrence. Shortly thereafter I started noticing at certain times in my own bedroom the cloying smell of cheap women's perfume mixed with a damp musty smell. Imagine an old person's clothes left on a damp musty basement floor near a litter box that wasn't being changed often enough, and you get the idea. Mike flaked out and left only 4 months into our 1-year lease, which meant I was left footing the rent for the entire place until I could find another roommate. I had decided to try and sleep in his bedroom shortly after he moved to see if things would get better. Soon after that I started to hear the loud bangs at night and the flushing of the toilet in the bathroom. Several times the hot water in the bathtub turned on full blast in the middle of the night. One of the freakier things that happened not too long before I moved is the time I was woken up by the TV blaring Poltergeist on City TV at about 2 in the morning. When I was a kid, about 7 to 8 years old, I was on my way to the park. It was in the middle of day in the middle of summer, but as I open the gate I freeze, as I hear a very creepy voice whisper my name in the distance. I look around. No one within sight, and I live in the middle of town, small town, still frozen on the spot, still scouting for the source of the voice. Then, I hear it again. But this time, right in front of my face. I immediately unfreeze, sprint back inside, and hide under my desk, shaking like crazy. I never went outside that day. When I was younger, I was sitting in my great-grandmother's living room. This house was known to have some issues in regards to paranormal activity. A lighter was casually sitting on the table. My mother smoked. This was a closed room with no wind or interference. My mother practically SHT her pants, and the only time we ever visited with her was when she came to us. Have not been back to this day. I was a rookie cop when my brother committed suicide. He was one of my older siblings, but we were very close. He died in another state, and I had a lot of guilt then about not recognizing the signs. His remains were in bad shape by the time he was discovered, so it was a closed coffin service. About a week after he died, I was back at work one night, and my partner and I see a pimp pistol whipping one of his girls. I jump out and the pimp sees me and the foot chase was on. Right before I reach the courtyard, I hear "It's okay" in my dead brother's voice. I hit the courtyard and the guy is against the side pointing a gun at my head, and squeezes the trigger twice. I froze for a millisecond and then started beating him in the head with my revolver. I tell my partner about him squeezing the trigger, but not the voice I heard. We unload the gun, .32 revolver, right there, and 2 bullets have strike marks on them. Take the gun to the lab for testing. Tell the tech the story. He puts the 2 bullets with strike marks back in and shoots into the test tank. Both bullets fired. About 2 Decembers ago, my fiancée was over my parents' house with me. My parents had gone to a Christmas party and he was helping me set up the tree and decorate the house. All the stuff is in the attic and everyone has said the attic had a strange feeling about it. So we are up in the attic and he mentions he feels like someone was watching us. I say it's probably just the cat as I hand him boxes. We go downstairs and we are unpacking the boxes when we heard a series of huge thuds. It scared me and I go outside. At that moment, my parents pull up and my dad tells at me for being outside in the cold without a jacket. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.